Hi everyone, and welcome to our project discussion on the RG Naxos Hotel in Sicily, designed by THDP. My name is Sarah Cullen and I am the editor of Darc magazine, and I am joined by Nick Hickson from THDP, who is the lead designer on this particular project. So we're going to look at the design journey of the hotel with a bit of a focus on the decorative lighting choices, but also how the scheme worked together as a whole, and the influences of the design choices based on the hotel's location at the base of Mount Etna. So to kick things off, thank you for joining us, Nick. And
Good morning.
Good morning. And if you could just start by explaining how you guys got involved with the project and what the initial brief was from your client.
Sure. So THDP was founded in Italy in 2005. My wife's Italian, I'm British, and so when we were over there, I think about 2011, 2012, before we kind of moved ourselves back over to the UK, we went to the owner's hotel in Milan. He has a couple of properties, some trade as Marriott, some trade as Hilton, and he has a Marriott in Milan. At that stage, we didn't actually know that he had a property also in Sicily, and it only came to like really beginning of or the end of 2019, where he decided to refurbish both properties. So we actually pitched for both, and we won the one in Sicily, which is actually a slightly bigger hotel, and that was destined to become a Delta by Marriott. So I think he also picked up our details through Marriott because we're one of the recommended designers there. And we started, I think we were appointed December 2019, so about 3 months before this horrid COVID kind of came and hit us. So it was one of those projects where we went to the hotel, saw the amazing location. I think it was December 2019, it was kind of raining, but it was just an amazing, fantastic location right under Mount Etna. This amazing volcano in Sicily. It has its own volcanic beach, which is dark grey. And there was just some, immediate attachment to that property because it was hadn't been refurbished for many years. It had been trading as I think initially as an American brand, a Holiday Inn, and then became a Hilton, and then it fell out of the Hilton brand and had just traded as RG Naxos, and now it will become a Delta.
Fantastic. And what was the brief that the client gave when you first went and visited the space? What did you see, and what was sort of your first impressions, and what did he want to change when revamping the space?
Well, I think the briefing came not just from the owner. I think who had kind of more of the kind of passive taste or kind of passive orientation relating to that. I think he'd chosen the Delta brand because of the the conditions under which you enter. It was fairly easy, not so strict in terms of budgeting. It kind of fitted in with the economical plan of the property itself. But I think Marriott were very keen to, when they saw the hotel themselves, the Marriott team were very keen to kind of update it. I think over the years, gradually the hotel had kind of morphed into quite a Baroque Sicilian, very personal choice type of interior. One of the unusual features of the hotel is it's very large. I mean, when I say that, I mean all the rooms are 33, 34 square meters, which is probably, I mean, it's kind of an American brand standard, but for kind of European properties, a little bit bigger than average, which way you might think about 27, 28, 29. So the rooms are very big. The lobby was enormous, something like 500 or 600 square meters, which for a kind of modern property is a bit oversized and a little bit empty. There was no bar, there was just the check-in area and a huge lounge, which was decorated with red, as I said, slightly Baroque style seating. There was a little, almost like lamps going down the space, again, very Sicilian, very Baroque. And I think that the brand really wanted to kind of just refresh all of that. I mean, although that was, it was liked by many guests. I think some guests were kind of put off by the styling of that, a little bit dated and such. So I think the brand wanted to really make it feel more like a resort, which is what it is. It's by the sea. It's a MICE hotel, so they have meetings and events there. So again, for bookings for the large businesses who go there, I think maybe they would be put off by that styling. They're a little bit heavy, a little bit overbearing, and they really wanted to refresh that and make it more of a modern resort feel, lighter colors, more local finishes, etc. So that was the overall briefing. And if you ask me later on about some of the finishes, some of the textures, some of the lighting, I can go in more to detail about that. But that was kind of the aim really, is to kind of give it a refresh, make it feel inviting, engaging, try and activate some of these spaces like the lobby, for example, which is just a huge empty space, by adding F&B elements into it. That was the kind of the overall aim of the general aim of the briefing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, fantastic. So I think to give maybe the viewers a bit more of an idea, it might be nice if you gave us a bit of a walkthrough as if you're a guest coming to the hotel, and describe some of the design choices you made. So starting in the lobby, you explained you put some F&B sort of elements in there, and then perhaps moving through to the bedrooms and the restaurants, and sort of how the aesthetics were influenced by, you mentioned it's near the seaside and at the base of the volcano. How these natural elements were all incorporated into the beautiful design that you created.
Yeah, so I guess the obviously the point of arrival, it has kind of a drive-up area, which is quite kind of nice. We didn't the exterior wasn't changed so much. One of the natural features of the columns and on the exterior is it's actually clad with grey lava stone, which is kind of a local finish and a local tradition as such. It's very kind of Tracy Island-esque. It's kind of interesting, dark, and orientates you in a particular way, and which we were a fan of, but in some instances was kind of a little bit overbearing. So in some areas of the hotel, we tried to retain that, and some areas we tried to remove it or disguise it or hide it as such. I guess the point of arrival for the guests as you enter is the check-in area. So that was completely rejuvenated, by adding new pods, adding new wall cladding behind the reception to kind of create a feature wall, and that was done with a local tiling with new feature wall lights, for example, from Utu. The lobby area, as I said, was huge, so we activated that by adding a new lobby bar, which is kind of centrally placed, and then creates its own little seating area around that, and with the addition of a kind of a lounge area to the other side of that. So, but that also is visible from the street. So the idea really was for guests and also locals to see the bar and kind of activate that space and make it something of a kind of local activity really that you would see. The choices of finishes and colors was really, again, local. So obviously being by the sea, choosing turquoise, aqua, blue, these kind of finishes was, the starting point in some ways. It's a very Sicilian choice. But for things like the reception desk and the top of the bar, we also chose Enameled Lava, which is a local finish. So they take a slab of cut lava, which is imagine almost like a gray marble, and they add a powdered enamel to it, and then it's basically baked, and that kind of cracks and forms this beautiful top surface for the top of the bar and for the top of the reception. In the reception, it's actually a dark gray, so it ties in with, again, the cladding of this lava stone on the outside. And for the bar, it's a softer, whiter finish, more of a just an off-white, which is then activated by kind of blue leather work on the front of the bar itself. The finishes of upholstery and seating, again, which try and reactivate the space. So the banquet seating has got USB and charging points, so you can gather there during the day and actually do some working. There's also a little social working table to one side as well. And all of these things were completely new to that lobby. They really weren't there before. So the idea was that guests don't sit in the room and work. They come down into the lobby and activate that space. The guest rooms themselves, again, with the styling of them was fairly dated. Blue carpets and red upholstery and red curtains, again, quite heavy. So we stripped the floor. We put a hardwood floor down. The bathrooms were, again, refinished and refitted out. And we had a combination of some of the furniture, which was, again, fairly dated, but beautifully made. We actually reused or retouched and refinished. So some of the nightstands, we actually managed to keep them. So we didn't really want to, and again, I think it's actually far more sustainable to try and reuse some furniture which is in good condition. And we felt that actually the style of it was in keeping, but it was just the color, the treatment that was on it, just needed updating, adding new tops to it, but then just painting it in just an off-white or something, just to kind of give it a more modern texture, really. There's two restaurants in the hotel. One is the all day, which is breakfast, lunch, and evening meal. That's a large, huge space, and that had a new buffet counters, a new open kitchen fitted to it. And again, that was completely refurbished with new lighting, new carpeting, new wall finishes, new furnishings throughout. There's also a fine dining restaurant, which actually has a terrace in front of the pool. And there's also a pool bar, which also sits by the pool. So all of these things were, again, just activating the F&B offering of the hotel, which had kind of lagged behind, really. I mean, obviously, being in Sicily, being in Italy, the food and beverage is exceptional, but sometimes a little bit dated in terms of service. So it's just adding that, as it were, that European or worldwide touch to those spaces to kind of re-engage them, update the menus, update the drink offering really to the bars, and come up with a completely new invitation for the guests, really. The pool area was again quite interesting because the choice was made to put a grey tile into the pool, which is quite unusual, but it actually gives this rather mirrored effect on the inside of the pool. And again, the finishes for the outside were quite taupey rope finishes on the upholstery, etc. For the lighting throughout the hotel, again, there were always choices made for trying to keep things local. So we used Aldo Bernardi, for example, for some of the lighting. Omnio, which is a Spanish company who make huge woven almost chandeliers, really, were used in the lobby to kind of fill a corner of space. And in the fine dining area, we use a company called Utu, which is again Spanish, and they make some fantastic wire lighting and copper finishes. So we tried to always add in decoration where we could, but the budget for the project was not exceptional. So we're always trying to kind of keep that in mind, and where possible, and make choices which also had a kind of decorative value as well as a functional value in terms of lighting.
Fantastic, thank you so much. So you mentioned that you brought onto the project in December 2019, obviously before everything went into lockdown and things became very difficult working remotely. How did that impact on the sort of design journey for this particular project? Because I understand it was sort of completed mostly over 2020 and then start of 2021 as well. How did the team adapt to working on this in that situation?
Well, I mean, probably like everyone else, it was a challenge really to find new ways and new systems of working. We very quickly had to kind of work out how to use Zoom and Teams, etc. I had to say, I mean, whilst that worked fairly well, there's nothing like having a one-to-one relationship with an owner, especially when you have a large budget in hand, and in terms of trust. So I have to say, probably the relationship overall suffered because of the COVID situation, but I'm sure that's the case with many projects. Luckily, we have a team in Italy in any case. My partner's based over there now. She moved over there during the summer. But we have a team of 5 people over there. So it was always possible to have someone visiting the hotel. But again, the team based in London, who was also actively engaged in the project, only met the client really through Teams or Zoom meetings, etc. I was fortunate enough to get out to the hotel before the lockdown, so that was very useful to kind of orientate myself, just visually. And obviously, we took huge amounts of photographs and work from the kind of existing drawings. But it's not an easy process, not one I really want to repeat. And I think you learn very important lessons about your design and client relationships, and you realize how, as I said, that's so important in making it more personal. There's nothing like holding a material in your hand and explaining it to someone, as opposed to trying to show them that during a call where they can't orientate themselves really in terms of making those choices. So yeah, I mean, that didn't make life easier as such. And we ended up sending out probably 15 or 16 sample boards out to Italy, just so they could actually see materials in hand. But again, just orientating around those sample boards and explaining to the owner really what was going where was a more complicated business for that reason.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially like showing products and the scale and things. There's only so much you can get from the screen.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned that you used a lot of local-based projects, sort of your lighting, a lot of it's from Spain. Is that a conscious decision that you use as a practice as a whole with a lot of your projects, or was that influenced by the fact that you had to narrow down your sort of pickings to local areas during the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, we even had a supplier, local fabricator, actually making custom lighting, who was probably no more than about 10 miles from the hotel. I mean, as I said, fortunately, we are an Italian, with my wife being Italian, and British-based ownership as such. I think we're fortunate that we do, and because we founded the company in Italy, have a huge portfolio of suppliers in terms of lighting. I mean, there are just many lighting manufacturers in Italy. Starting with the glassware, for example, and the Venetian glassware, right through to kind of technical lighting around Milan, for example. So we've always been very lucky, and the design partnership part of our name, THDP, the DP part of it, the partnership actually is related to our partnership with suppliers. It's one thing which we always focus on very early on, is working with partners in that way, because what we find is that very often where we have to do things so quickly and engage so heavily on a project, that we can actually pass certain aspects of the interior to a supplier to say, look, we're looking for this kind of fitting, we're looking for that. Can you assist us in terms of specifying that? Or we work with them in terms of designing. So we've actually got a few collections going where we've actually designed them and they're made by Italian manufacturers. So I think we're lucky in that regard. That's not to say that in the UK there's not manufacturers, but in Italy there's probably tenfold. And more than that, I mean, we had just had some of the team go down to Puglia for 3 days as we're working on a masseria in Puglia, which is a kind of a fortified farmhouse, which has been converted to a 23, 24 room 5-star hotel. And they were literally with the artisan who is he's weaving the lampshades for the guest room, for example. And there's nothing better actually than working with artisans, and as I said, with woven works, leather works in Florence, or lighting in Italy, in Venice, for example, Murano glass. There really is nothing better than working with some of these artisans. And I think it's something which is going to come back again, rather like when William Morris was kind of saying, let's just stop mass production, go back to hand making things. I think there's a real value, there's a real skill in that, and it's something which as designers we really like, because you suddenly have someone who's working on something which they really inherently understand, rather than they don't invest the time in looking at new processes or new techniques. And so they're just regurgitating the same ideas. And it's when someone comes up with a new technique that suddenly you get a new design in your hand. That for us is kind of key, because if we have great designs to specify, then already our work is original. It's not just our work, but it's also what we're using has an originality to it. So like you say, working with lighting suppliers in Italy was something which we really enjoy, and like I said, and throwing the net even wider, looking at Spain. There's also many companies around Barcelona, because we also worked on a Hilton in Barcelona, where we found some fantastic companies, and we've worked on several projects.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so important for a big project like this to sort of support its local economy and its local community. And it's almost like I see it's like a sort of a billboard of the local design itself, because you get to, as guests, you get to see what's actually there and what's made and what's sort of.
Absolutely. I mean, guests are looking for originality, authenticity, and these kind of key words. And there's no point saying, "Oh, this is such an authentic hotel," and the lighting is not local. It's made in Turkey or made in China or wherever. I mean, economically, of course, sometimes that has to happen. But I think a lot of even manufacturers in the UK are turning away from this kind of mass-produced product and looking to the European economy, because I think that the differences in costings have changed over the years, but also the fact that you're working with people who are, as I said, artisans more often than not. They're not just there producing thousands of things, but they're producing things in tens and fifties and hundreds. And the quality, not just the quality, but the authenticity really is there, and that's what I find so engaging, really.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I'm conscious of time, but just to wrap things up, is there anything that you would have done differently if you didn't have to create this project during the pandemic, or otherwise? Is there any changes that you would have liked to have made reflecting back on it now?
Always. I mean, it's it's, and almost, I mean, obviously, how the project evolved with COVID, etc., was one thing, but and we don't need to repeat that. But I think always in any project, you look at how you've done things and what you've done and choices you've made, and I don't think anyone is ever quite satisfied with whatever they've done. It's like an artist who paints a picture. You never know quite when it's finished, and sometimes you can kind of overpaint it too much. But I think there are a few things that kind of stand out in terms of the design work. I think because of the timing and the kind of the meetings, I think because the choices being made and that the budgets that were set, there was a lot of time expended on just resolving budgetary issues because we couldn't really all sit around a table together. And that kind of bled into the design time and the choice time. And I think the client probably would have preferred us to spend more time with him meeting local companies rather than him having to meet them himself. So therefore, his some of the choices, the final choices, the final procurement routes that he decided upon varied from our specification, for example. And that happens, but it would have been perhaps if we had that relationship more stabilized and we had the opportunity to actually accompany him to go and visit various suppliers, then that trust element would have been more enforced in a way, and I think we would have helped him through that journey. So yeah, I mean that's of that particular project. I mean, there's many other projects we work on where that is never a problem, or and even when you're meeting people can be a problem, but it's just as I said, that kind of question of trust it is always so much harder when you don't meet someone face to face, and when there's a lot on the line, because this is as I said, it's not a small hotel, it's a very large property, with a lot at stake. So I guess just the ability to meet face to face was probably that key to access point in the project, where and the final 3 months of the project where some things were done where we weren't quite in alignment with the owner, but as I said, that's completely natural.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it always happens.
Always happens, but I mean, no hard feelings. It's just one of those things, and
yeah.
I mean, I think sometimes, like an artist, as a designer, you need to have you need to hold the project in your hand and hold it tightly, and sometimes that can be taken as being, I don't know, a little bit fixated, or you are really driven by something. But what I know is that if you really want to get a good result, you need to come up with a really great idea and not let go of it. Mm-hmm. because sometimes it's so easy in terms of budget or in terms of design work to be distracted, but it's nearly always your first thought, your instinctive thought, that is often right. And sometimes you kind of distracted or turned in other ways, and it's nearly always when you return to that original concept, the original idea, that you go and hit the mark. And I think as designers, that's always important to protect your work, because you're actually in the end protecting the owner from some choices that they may make. And sometimes they can get a little bit peeved about that, but it's just it's sometimes you have to be the bad person to say no, do it this way. But
you've got the experience and the know-how of how it's going to turn out, and it's got to be an element of, I guess, like a trust fall for the client. They just need to.
Well, I mean, experience teaches you nothing but to trust yourself.
Yeah.
It's just finding people to trust you is the hard thing. But the first thing, if you don't trust yourself, or don't trust your choices, or you don't have an opinion, I mean, what we do as designers every day is just make decisions, and it's quite simple. You just have to make one decision after the other. Unfortunately, in a hotel, there are thousands of decisions to make. So, you don't second guess yourself, just go with what you feel is right from the get-go and push that through. That nearly always is the key to a successful project.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. I think that's probably all we've got time for. But I hope everyone's enjoyed watching and listening, and that's been a really great insight into how you guys have tackled this in very sort of unfortunate circumstances, but you have done an amazing job. It's a stunning hotel, and
thank you.
I hope one day I get to see it in person. But yeah,
I'm sure we can hook you up. It's a lovely location. I mean, unique, and I mean, Etna. I mean, I've sat on the beach and watched Etna do its fireworks, and it's It's one of those, how you say, kind of bucket list kind of things that you want to sit there and watch a volcano lying on a beach in the night, in the dead of night. It's amazing with the sea in the background and just this fireworks going off. It's incredible.
And it's probably one of those moments that makes you realize how small you are in terms of nature's sort of
Yeah, how lucky you are. I mean, so
yeah,
sometimes doing this work, you think like it's such hard work. There are other times where you look at yourself and thinking, I'm so lucky doing this. I wanted to be a designer when I was 11, so now I do that every day, and I don't regret ever making that choice in my life. But it is all consuming. But I get up every day and love what I do, and it's a great reminder when I'm lying on that beach looking at that with my family, because I was there staying there during the summer, that I thought to myself, yeah, we're so lucky to be doing this.
that's incredible.
Privileged, in fact.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you
Good.
so much for joining us, Nick.
Great,
And
thank you.
thank you everyone for watching as well.
Thank you. Okay, speak soon.
Bye.